Hey guys, Dr. James Jernigan here with Liz Kahn with You Be Well. And what I want to, it's kind of cool because we a lot of times challenge each other.
Yeah.
And so what I wanted to do today is just do another interview type with Liz. And last week, I think, I said something and you challenged me on it. So then we had to talk through it and we dove through it to find out, like, pointing everything out, right? And kind of like working through it together so that we both can understand where we're coming from and how it applies. And when we do this, both of our understandings of not only each other, but then also our understandings and our own personal beliefs and our own personal thought processes start to develop and get more solidified at a truer sense. Because that's what we really like. It's like, one is really deep conversations, because then we can start to understand in a way that's very opening and just purely we want to find out a little bit more information.
Well, right? And I think it's also helpful. It's helpful for us to understand our perspectives, each other's perspectives differently, also because it helps really for us to support our clients and our patients in a better way, where I know, like, I used to think if it's emotional, like, it can be worked with cognitively, until I met this guy who's like, yeah, you know, their central nervous system has a lot to do with how those signals work. So, yeah, if it's emotional, it can be worked with cognitively. It can also be wildly, amazingly supported with some structural manipulations as well. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like, it doesn't have to be, this is one thing about, don't really want to get into it, like, with society, but it's like, with society, a lot of times we believe, like, my beliefs are, if they're true, then they're 100% true, and then the other person's,
there's nothing else.
Then a contradictory belief is like 100% false. And so, but really that's not how life is. It's not black and white. And so,
and we talked about that last week when we talked about there's so many other professional resources that are going to support the work that each of us does for you.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, and here today we're talking about language, really, again.
Language, and I think there's two things, and we don't really know how we're gonna, like, start to dive into this, but I think that it'll work itself out. We trust it.
Right.
We always just trusted that, like, the more that you talk, the more it starts to develop into something that's going to be really meaningful for them, and then meaningful for us. So, yeah.
Because this kind of started with me coming in kvetching, and if you don't know the word kvetching, it's like complaining. My foot hurts, my ankle hurts, this hurts, and then I had this thing with my son this morning that made me. And then you asked me this interesting question about behavior modification. Yeah. And that's exactly what I've been doing for the last 20 plus years. And your phone just did something funny, but I'm going to keep talking anyway. And so for the last 20 plus years, it's been my job to modify other people's behavior, and I'm very good at it. But it's different when it's your kid. And even in all of my work, I never tried to trick anybody into behavior modification. So it's always been like, this is the goal that we're going for. This is the objective that we're looking to achieve. How are we going to do this together? Yeah. Whether it's in communication or in changing, like, some of these behaviors, the repetitive behaviors. But you were going to start to ask me other questions, and I was like, let's do this here. So
what we're not talking about is, like, with what, like, Liz does, because really what you're doing is you're activating change in people's, really the structure of their brain, the focus of their brain. Like, by implementing these things, you can make change in your life.
Yes.
And really that's where the deep thing is, right? And so maybe this isn't true, or maybe there's a million more reasons for this, but there's almost like two lines of thought. There's one is change your beliefs. That will change your actions, change like your behaviors, and then that leads to a different result, which reinforces a cycle.
Yeah, changing beliefs can be really hard.
Can be really tough. And so it's almost like where my thought process is just right off the top is by changing your beliefs and changing your behaviors or your focus, that's going to drastically change your life, right? And so what I'm trying to do is find out is behavior modification would be in that same line of thinking, would be that second step. And is that where you start?
So I think, when you talk about change your belief and you can change your life, that's really starting from the inside. And again, I say it can be really difficult to change a belief. I was a philosophy major in college, and we talked a lot about things like this. It's a lot easier to change an idea than it is to change a belief. Beliefs are very much already at the core of who you are. Our beliefs are kind of the seed that starts that thought process going, right? I believed I should be able to wake up and feel great in the morning, but when I put my foot down and I realize there's pain, I go, wait a minute, that belief doesn't really match anymore. A lot of the behavior modification, the life-changing tools that we use don't start from the inside. They really start from the outside. They kind of start from the result, right? I don't like the results I'm getting.
You want to change it.
So what am I going to do to change that result? And it's going to be about what I'm doing, right? But what I'm doing is very much related to how I feel, how, like, emotionally. How I feel emotionally has a lot to do with what I'm allowing myself to think about, which, of course, now we're going into is going to be rooted in that belief system. Okay. So instead of going beliefs onward, we kind of go results backwards. And instead of kind of digging into all those beliefs, we start with, okay, so what can I change in my behavior that's going to lead to a better result?
I think I'm following you, and I think there's a lot of depth into what you're saying. There definitely is a lot of depth with what you're saying.
And I'm not sure that one way is right and one way is wrong. I have not figured out how to change a belief first, right? Like, usually it's testing something 100 times. Like, I might believe that everything my brothers say to me is 100% true, and of course I'm going to wait for the one day that they actually watch this and they're going to be like, wait a minute. But, to find out that there isn't a monster that lives in the Washington Monument who, takes care of little sisters who are mean to their brothers, I need to find that out for myself before I actually believe that. Right? So, does that make sense?
So
it's silly.
So do you think people can make change without the belief of being able to make the change, right?
That's a tricky question.
You know what I'm saying? Because, like, if our brains are stuck and fixed, then what's the point of making the behavior change? You know what I'm saying? And then if our brains are plastic, then by making the changes, it's going to change. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think, so I think by nature, I'm skeptical.
There's a little buzz.
That was fun. I'm skeptical by nature. So to change my belief, I need to see the evidence, right? And I think when I first discovered these tools, I didn't believe for a second that there was anything out there that could help me because I was an angry, angry woman. I was a really angry woman.
Which is not the Liz that I know.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I felt like I had tried everything, and I had followed protocols diligently, and I had done everything that all these, really happy people were telling me to do, but I couldn't let things go. Nobody had a recipe for that, and I was kind of trapped in this anger place. Yeah. So this next guy who's like, listen, try this, and if it doesn't work for you in 24 hours, if you don't feel a change, then, write me off as a quack and that's fine. How can you not accept that challenge, right? I'll do this thing for 24 hours. So other people were like, spend 9 months on a cleanse. That's hard. Do this thing for 24 hours, done. So I changed my behavior.
See a little bit of proof before you could start to accept it.
Right, but there are some people who do start with belief where I have a new bit of information that is reasonable, that makes sense, and it feels like they resonate with it. And they can start from there and say, from this point on, this is how I'm going to show this belief. There is not one intervention strategy that will work for everybody. So you got to kind of know who you are. I'm a skeptic. I want the data. So I'll try pretty much anything within reason. If nothing else, just to prove you wrong. And, that's what a good scientist does, right? We work to prove the null hypothesis. And so, for me, behavior modification is absolutely about testing in little bits. And it's making me think about your analogy about the pool. I'm definitely a toe dipper. Yeah. I want to make sure that water is not going to chill me, is not going to boil me. It's going to be just where I need it to be so that I can take those next steps. Whereas you might just dive in and be like, I'm going to acclimate.
Yeah, my first thought is if there's science out there that I can read, if it makes sense with the philosophy, the understanding, the big picture, if that makes sense, if both of those start lining up, and then it's like, now I have an action plan, it's like, I'm going to go in and I'm going to try this.
Yeah.
I'm going to see if it works.
So you said something else that kind of, it kind of gave me chills.
Yeah.
If there's science out there to read. Now, here's one of those funny things, especially about my program, where there is science out there to read. But it's not, it doesn't have a very long history. So, we've got about 30 years, but as you know, when we learn things in the scientific and the research and the medical community, it usually is about a 45 to 50 year process before that new information gets disseminated to everybody. So it might be hard to find the actual research. And so sometimes it is about a leap of faith, which actually kind of turns around to, I believe I can try this and see what happens. So maybe there is a lot to this belief first. I have a lot of ideas. I have a lot fewer beliefs than I do ideas. My ideas are much more fluid. I can incorporate other people's ideas in without it feeling like a devastating blow to my belief structure. And that's the other part that we really need to identify, is that changing a belief structure, beliefs, it's not just like a category, here's a belief here and here's a belief here. Most of them merge together. This is a pretty complex world we live in, so most of our beliefs are woven together. When I can say, I believe that this program works, it's because I have tested this program from all levels. And then when we get back to this notion of changing behavior modification, and specifically about what I'm going to do with my son, who, on the heels of me waking up in a lot of physical pain, said something that I think in his head was funny, but was actually kind of painful. And so when you're in physical pain, and then you get that little emotional dig, and it's like, oh man, what am I going to do to help my son learn? Do I want to modify his behavior? Technically, yes, I do. But in practice, it's going to be a really loving process. The whole thing is going to be more like, hey, and trying to get a 9-year-old to cognitively and conceptually understand things, not going to happen. So I have to come up with a plan, and that's really what we started with, me telling you that when he first said that unkind thing, I went straight into a mirror and I looked at my face and I was like, does this work for me? Does this emotional state work for me? And I could feel, because we know about these feedback loops, right? The muscles trigger the brain, between the neurotransmitters and the hormones, as well as the thought process. Why would he say such a thing? That's where we need to interrupt that process and say, what's going to work better? And how am I going to address this with my son later so that, A, he doesn't feel like he's being punished, because he's still testing out boundaries. He's still learning about the world, and I have to respect that. So,
and then I guess that's where we really entered the conversation was because I was like, whenever you're in a place, and we talk about it, like if somebody pulls in front of you into a car, like like you're driving, somebody pulls in front of you, you get mad, like you can change your physiology, you can change your thought processes, but at the deepest level is like, would the behavior modification, is that really letting it go? Or is it just like kind of brushing it under the rug and then moving forward? That's my thought.
It's a great question, because, and it's something that's come up quite a bit in the last couple of weeks with my groups. Does this process actually resolve an issue, or does it cover it? And I think, it depends on where you go with it. Like in the world of behavior analysis, we don't know if something is punishing or reinforcing until we see the behavior again, right? For me, how many times is my son going to say something that's going to trigger me? Is the thing that I'm doing, am I letting go of this thing, like, of the words that he said, or of the feeling that was triggered in me, right? And so the feeling that was triggered in me, that's going to be a little bit deeper than that, right? So what is it about these words that my son says that hurt so much? Listen, if you're a parent, you know the things your kids say just hit you to the core. I don't want to let go of the fact that my son's words are meaningful and powerful to me. It would be nice if he did not say such things, but He's trying to be funny, whatever it is. Do I want to let it go? I want to use the information from it so that I'm not reacting to it all day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that there's a better answer than that.
Yeah, because I don't know if this is off topic, and it is getting a long video.
Look at how, yeah.
But is that fine if we just keep...
I think it's fine.
I think so.
We'll go for another minute.
When's your next...
I'm late. It's okay.
Okay.
She'll be watching this too, and she'll know that I'm thinking about it.
Okay. Because I guess I don't know, I think back when I was in middle school, and my dad said, like, he was talking about him and my mom, and he said, never call, like, person around you that's close to you, never call them a name, because the next time it gets frustrating, it's going to be a whole lot easier to say it again. And then, so, like, I've taken that really to heart. So in every relationship or with my relationship with Brienne, it's like, if there's something that's, like, frustrating, or if there's something going on, it's like, I want to bring it out, and we want to talk about it so that we're both here, we both understand it, and it starts to go away. Instead of, like, fuming off, walking, 2 minutes later coming back with a new head, it's like a fresh look at it. It's like, if we can just find it, eliminate it, and then walk through it, then there's not these, like, layers that are building off of that over years become a new baseline.
And I think that's brilliant. I love that you said that, because there's something else to it. Like, there's this thing about working towards a resolution versus letting something go.
Right.
And I think they have very different meanings, right? Like, if I'm just going to let it go anytime my son says something nasty, just like your dad says, it's going to be easier for him to continue saying nasty things. Pardon me. So I don't want to let that go. Mm-hmm. I do want to resolve it. And I think this is probably a good place to end, and we should probably do another video on the difference between letting something go and finding resolution, and the impact that it has on you emotionally and physically.
Awesome.
So maybe that's where we're going to end today. Happy Monday, everybody.
Oh, we love you guys. Sorry if it was really deep.
No, I think this was
awesome.
great.
Yeah.
So you'll let us know, right, in the comments.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. See you tomorrow.